¿A dónde está papi? 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 ¿A dónde está papi?
Welcome to the Tuesday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Tuesday. Welcome, everybody. Sorry about that. How's everybody going? Derry Bennett, Heat, how's it going? Quad Bennett, let's go indeed. I'm here. Whew. How's everybody doing? We have quite the amount to go through, and never enough time, it seems. Howdy. Okay. Just making sure I have everything. Okay. How's everybody doing? First and foremost, before we get started, the usual shill session, okay? If you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. It really does help us out. Also, just as a heads up, also, this Saturday coming up, that's right, this Saturday, there is a movie night, and so far, I'm going to check back with the poll, but so far it looks like sci-fi seems to be winning the poll. So if that's the case, I am open to putting on Starship Troopers as the sci-fi movie. So that is definitely on my on my list. So feel free to join the Discord if you are already on the Discord and have not voted and want to participate in the movie night poll. You can. I'll make another announcement probably tomorrow. I'm a trendsetter. It also happens to be humorous. There you go. All right, folks. Hey, service guarantees citizenship. Welcome, Michael Hassler. So that is definitely an option on the table. I'm doing my part. Since there's been so much discourse around this, I figured it would be a good choice anyways. All right, folks, we're gonna get started, and I think this is a place to start, I suppose.
Terrorist organization that must be call out Hamas for what it is, and it is a terrorist organization that must be stopped. No country should live with that threat, that specter over them. And for those who don't understand this dynamic here in our own state, in our own country, I'll give you an example.
Surely, it totally and normally, we're already starting pretty normal and pretty hinged. So, yeah. Who is this woman? Oh, just the governor of New York. Bipedal meatbag. Nikki, no, this is not Nikki Haley. This is the governor of New York. Or is the governor of New York? Is she? Is it Catherine Hochul? Am I getting this wrong?
I'm from Buffalo. Anybody realize that? If Canada someday ever attacked Buffalo, I'm sorry, my friends, there would be no Canada the next day, right? Right? I love Canada, but we did have the War of 1812, and they did burn.
Yeah, so this is completely and totally unhinged, okay? Saying that, like... saying, like, that the appropriate response for, like, an attack by Canada would be to literally wipe them out is actually, like, unhinged, okay? And then to kind of use that example to justify the elimination of an entire people is just abhorrent, okay? It's okay, all white brunette-headed women look the same, I should know. I'm betting she's a Dem. Yep, she is. She is. No, her name is Kathy Hochul. I'm sorry, not Catherine. Kathy Hochul. You see, I was in the ballpark. I was in the ballpark. Okay, not Catherine. It's Kathleen. Wasn't she lieutenant governor under Cuomo? I believe so, actually. I'm pretty sure that's correct. Anyways, this is completely unhinged, okay? Like, you can't justify the entire elimination of people because you were attacked once, right? Like, that's not how this works. The solution isn't like, oh, you know, they attacked us once, so now we gotta, like, eliminate every one of them. That's not an acceptable answer. And it's incredible how someone could get up there as a governor of one of the bigger states economically to just say that. Yeah, it's the American way, true.
In Buffalo, so there might be a little conflict here. But think about that. That is a natural reaction. You have a right to defend yourself.
Okay, a natural reaction? Like, can you imagine? So basically, like, with her logic, like, if you get attacked, okay? The Overton window's been pushed right since 9/11. Yep. Like, can you imagine if you were attacked and then, like, your response would be to not only just, like, kill the attacker, but go find their friends, their families, and then kill them and then burn all of their houses down and then like have the audacity to be like, "No, I'm sorry, judge. I was just defending myself." No one would look at that and be like, "Oh, yeah, that's a perfectly reasonable response." Like no one would look at that. Like if somebody attacks you and you end up not just killing them, but going after their friends and family and killing them too and burning down their homes, and then like making sure none of them are able to move back, like any survivors are able to move back, like nobody would say like, "Oh wow, yeah, dude, that's totally reasonable." That's not self-defense. Like under no circumstance would that be self-defense. Yeah, it's like going after gang members in LA by nuking California. Correct, that's another example. And saying like, well, you know, we got to take care of organized crime. No one would be like, yeah, it sounds reasonable. That's also not self-defense.
And to make sure it never happens again. And that is Israel's right.
No, it's actually not. No, it's actually not. It turns out that you can't just commit ethnic cleansing under the guise of self-defense, okay? That's totally not how this works, and that's totally not justifiable. They could be talking about the US here, interchangeable. Yep. Like, how ludicrous is this? That we're having Democratic politicians talk like this. This is absurd, okay? I think what got me, because I posted a response to this, like what got me is the fact that she tried to say that it is like natural, like it's just a natural reaction for you to just want to ethnically cleanse a people, right? Like it's just a natural reaction, you know? No, it's not. No, it's not. I gave the same example here. If I ever get attacked, the obvious and natural reaction is to kill their entire friends and family and burn down their homes and call it self-defense. I'll even show this video, or I'll show them this video in court, don't worry. This is absurd. A bad time to come into chat. It's always a bad time. I'm just kidding. Welcome, Wolf Glen. I'm sorry you had to walk it into this absurdity. Gata Naranja, welcome. I saw an article posted a bit ago about Biden's one mistake, believing Netanyahu, and just totally lets him off the hook. Yeah, like it's like that other article where Biden like apparently insulted Netanyahu by calling him an a-hole or something like that, or something to that effect. Yeah, man, like what good does any of that do to the now 30-something thousand civilians that are dead? Okay. Yeah, he really showed him. And like, oh, listen here, Jack. You know, I made one mistake. It was a really bad mistake. Well, dude, are you still giving him weapons? Are you still funding? Are you still sending money? Yeah, then like I don't know, man. Like it doesn't really do much, right? Doesn't really do much. Doesn't do the families, those that remain, of the 30-something thousand, 36,000, doesn't do them any good. It's meaningless. I'm not educated on this. Does Trump also support Bibi? Yes. Well, he says that he is very pro-Israel. Okay. Whether Trump believes in anything is yet to remain, remain to be seen. I don't know, whatever the saying is. But yes, on paper, on paper he does. On paper he does. So Bibi has nothing to worry about until the next election, which is really far. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if Bibi has anything to worry about, so long as anyone in the U.S. government continues to support and show no willingness to stand up and do the right thing. It's kind of irrelevant on this issue. Right. The point is there is no difference. Correct. Correct. The next Israel election is October of 26. Jeez. The only thing Bibi has to worry about is Israeli voters who don't like him but do support the genocide. That's true. There are a lot of people that are not happy, but they're not happy with Bibi because they're not happy because he's committing genocide. They're angry because of the whole hostages situation. I mean, Bibi's plan, as far as I understand it, is to make sure that the war continues, and if that means opening up new fronts to maintain power, so be it. Bibi is evil, but he's not stupid. He's not like Trump dumb. I guess I could say that. I guess I could agree with that. They've escalated bombing civilian targets in Lebanon. Looks like they're trying to expand the war. Correct. Yep. That's exactly my thinking. That's exactly my thinking because it seems to be the only way he's going to try to hang on to power is to keep this going. Because before all this, before all of this happened, this dude was in trouble. You know, this dude was politically and possibly even criminally in some trouble, in some hot water. And now it just, all of a sudden, out of magic, it seems that all of that is being put aside for now. Most of his support is on the far right. Yes. But also, a lot of not so far right, right-wing people also seem to have coalesced around him. No nonsense. The difference is they can and do call for a vote of no confidence whenever the mood strikes them. Maybe. I don't know how it works. If so, then again, that probably explains why Bibi wants to keep this going. Right? Because at any given point, he knows that once this is over, the focus will be back on his political issues. His American Ivy League education and great English carry Bibi with the right wing. Well, I mean, his ideology carries with the right wing, right? He's also a good speaker. I can tell you.
Well, I unfortunately have some alarming news. KOSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, is bipartisan legislation sponsored by Republican Marsha Blackburn and Democrat Richard Blumenthal that now has 62 co-sponsors in the Senate. Yeah. Now, if you're unfamiliar with KOSA, its goal is to minimize the negative effects of social media on minors after researchers found that platforms like TikTok and Instagram were purposefully promoting dangerous content to teens. For example, the Eating Disorders Coalition, who endorsed KOSA, explained in a press release, quote, social media companies knowingly promote harmful mental health content to youth in return for boosted engagement and profits. According to research, platforms place extreme pro-eating disorder, suicide, and depression content next to youth targeting advertising and serve this content to maximize engagement and spending. And they go on to explain the stunning number of pro-eating disorder and pro-self-harm content that is being served to minors on a daily basis. So it is a genuine problem, and regulating social media companies who publish this sort of content does sound worthwhile on paper, but in practice, the way that KOSA is designed would end up hurting more young people in the end. As Fight for the Future, an internet rights group, explains, KOSA uses two methods to, quote, protect kids, and both of them are awful. First, KOSA would pressure platforms to install filters that would wipe the net of anything deemed inappropriate for minors. This equals instructing platforms to censor, plain and simple. Places that already use content filters have restricted important information about suicide prevention and LGBTQ plus support groups, and KOSA would spread this kind of censorship to every corner of the internet. It's no surprise that anti-right zealots are excited about KOSA. It would let them shut down websites that cover topics like race, gender, and sexuality. Second, KOSA would ramp up the online surveillance of all internet internet users by expanding the use of age verification and parental monitoring tools. Not only are these tools needlessly invasive, they're a massive safety risk for young people who could be trying to escape domestic violence and abuse. Now, the main question is, who gets to decide what is and isn't appropriate for minors? Because that can vary depending on the person. Now, as the New Republic explains, well, the person who gets to decide is state attorneys general. They would be the arbiters of alleged failures to, quote, prevent.
Yeah, see, that sounds like a really bad idea, right? Like, we can all see how this can go south really quickly, right? Under the guise of like protecting children, which incidentally is the same shield that they hide behind when making anti-trans laws.
And mitigate such harms with the power to impose penalties on platforms. Such actions could be initiated by the attorneys general themselves if they feel that any resident of their state is threatened or adversely affected by the engagement of any person in a practice that violates this act. So stop for a moment and try to think about the implications of this and how it could be used. A Republican attorney general like Ken Paxton in Texas, for example, could deem any and all websites about teen pregnancy as inappropriate because they provide minors with information about contraception and abortion.
Right. Like 100%. That's exactly how I see that playing out. 100%. That's exactly how that plays out. That's going to play out. If you give people like Ken Paxton, the power to do this.
Perhaps a suicide prevention website like the Trevor Project, which specifically tries to stop queer youth from harming themselves, could be inappropriate since it affirms the identities of young LGBTQ plus people and thus encourages homosexuality and grooms them, or some bullshit that they might come up with. The possibilities here are endless, and I'm not being overly cynical here with these examples because Marsha Blackburn, one of the co-sponsors of KOSA, literally admitted that this law would be used to censor LGBTQ plus content.
Protecting minor children from the transgender and this culture.
What? Protecting minor children from the transgenders. Okay. That's another. Think of the children pearl clutching. Exactly. It's this idea that they want to pretend they want to pretend like they're doing they want to pretend like they're protecting the children when they don't really care. Just to be clear, these people don't care about kids at all. But shouldn't the children be looking for professional help? Like if my child got pregnant, I wouldn't want her to go online and consume false information. That's not what this is about, though. That's not what this is about. I mean, she's telling you what this is about. I think she has misplaced the stick.
Possibilities here are endless, and I'm not being overly cynical here with these examples because Marsha Blackburn, one of the co-sponsors of KOSA, literally admitted that this law would be used to censor LGBTQ plus content.
Protecting minor children from the transgender and this culture and that influence. And I would add to that, watching what's happening on social media. And I've got the Kids Online Safety Act that I think we're going to end up getting through probably this summer. This would put a duty of care and responsibility on the social media platforms. And this is where children are being indoctrinated. They're hearing things at school, and then they're getting onto YouTube to...
Yeah, so this isn't about like misinformation or anything like that. This is to actively, the whole point is to actively put in place a way of censorship under the guise of pretending to make this about the children. But they shouldn't but they should reach out. They shouldn't go online and be given incorrect information. That's not what this is about, though. That's not what this is about. Did you not listen to what she's saying?
Watch a video, and all of a sudden this comes to them, and they're on Snapchat or they're on Instagram, and they click on.
Because like these are the same people, by the way, who are also angry at social media platforms actually banning real misinformation. Like, for example, banning election denialism. I mean, some of the guys are protecting kids, but it's trying to wipe out trans people's existence. Correct, among other things. Yes, that is correct. Not just like eliminating the idea, not only eliminating the ability to learn about LGBTQ people, censoring any information regarding LGBTQ people, but also eliminating the idea of getting information about, let's say, abortion. Anything that could potentially be a culture issue for the right. This is the perfect vector. This is a perfect vector for banning this information. That's all this is. But kids should not be allowed to transition their gender. They should get help and talk to a specialist. Well, here's what I think about that. Go fuck yourself.
On something, and the next thing you know, they're being inundated with it. Parents need to be watching this, teachers need to be watching, and protecting our children and making certain that they are not exposed to things if they are emotionally.
Right, you already have to like go through all this. That is correct, the simulacra. Like as if like this isn't already a thing. You're absolutely correct. Anyone else? I can never tell that they're just grifting, really believing this, or cynically pandering to what they think their voters want to hear. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Honestly, I don't know. She might be a true believer. Based on how she's talking. Based on how she's talking, she might be a true believer. I don't know. It doesn't matter, I guess, at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it might be the case that she's a true believer. It might be the case that she's grifting. It might be the case that she's just cynically pandering. Like, it doesn't matter. I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Not mature enough to handle.
So, I mean, you heard it straight from the horse's mouth. She is explicitly promoting KOSA as a weapon against LGBTQ plus indoctrination.
Correct.
Meaning that any content that affirms the identity of young LGBTQ plus people, which is necessary for suicide prevention, by the way, could be censored because of her law. So if you're a younger queer person and you have no one in your real life to talk to, sometimes finding an online community or a content creator that talks about your lived experience can be life-saving.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make a major announcement
today. A major announcement, okay? From your favorite president.
And taking that away from them in the name of safety is downright disgusting and Orwellian and dangerous. Now, that's not to say that there aren't genuine concerns.
Yeah, 100%. Because, so basically, the reason why, there isn't even a point in engaging in this conversation with these type of people, is because, anyone who comes out and saying, they shouldn't be allowed to trans the kids. Well, they do get, that there's that there's a whole process to this thing, right? Anyway, so it's incredibly bad faith. So we're not dealing with people that are coming in here in any capacity of good faith to come in here and say that nonsense. Hey, Firefly, how's it going? When people tell you who they are, believe them, 100%.
Concerns about social media, because there are. I'm personally worried about the proliferation of misogynistic red pill content that teaches young men to resent women. I'm also really concerned about the rise in white nationalism online and people with large platforms promoting white identity politics and white supremacy. And these social media companies really do have perverse incentives, and as a society, I do think that we need to find some way to deal with it. But this isn't it. This is not the way to deal with it. It's an attack on free speech that could ironically end up harming more kids in the long run than it's trying to help, if you even want to assume that the architects of this bill want to help kids. I mean, maybe, but
They don't. Like,
I don't know if their motivations are pure. I think that this is a
they don't. Like any person who's ever come at this from like the protect the kids angle, it's never been the case. It's never been the case.
the power grab that they're going to use for really nefarious reasons.
It's 100% a power grab. 100%.
Now, this is why so many civil rights organizations like the Human Rights Campaign and GLAAD came out against this initially, because of all of the negative implications and because of who's promoting this. Now, I say that they initially came out against it because they ultimately dropped their opposition to KOSA after adjustments to it were made to specifically address the concerns of these types of civil rights groups that were against it. Now, it was amended, and these changes are the reason why this bill was able to attract so many new co-sponsors like Chuck Schumer and Chris Murphy. And to be clear, the changes that they made to this legislation do make it better ostensibly, but the existing problems are still there. So let me explain. The Electronic Frontier Foundation writes, the latest version removes the authority of state attorneys general to sue or prosecute people for not complying with the duty of care, but KOSA still permits state officials to enforce other parts of the bill based on their political whims, and we expect those officials to use this new law to the same censorious ends as they would have of previous versions. And the legal requirements of KOSA are still only possible for sites to safely follow if they restrict access to content based on age, effectively mandating age verification. The updated duty of care says that a platform shall, quote, exercise reasonable care in creation and implementation of any design feature to prevent and mitigate those harms. The difference is subtle and ultimately unimportant. There is no case law defining what is, quote, reasonable care in this context. This language still means increased liability merely for hosting and distributing otherwise legal content that the government, in this case the FTC, claims is harmful. What KOSA tries to do here then is to launder restrictions on content that lawmakers do not like through liability for supposedly harmful design features. But the First Amendment still prohibits Congress from indirectly trying to censor lawful speech it disfavors. Allowing the government to ban content designs is a dangerous idea. If the FTC decided that direct messages or encrypted messages were leading to harm for minors under this language, they could bring in enforcement action against the platform that allowed users to send such messages. Now, if this all sounds super complicated, let me simplify it for you. The updated version of KOSA is fundamentally the same, but it is semantically different, and it does force attorneys general to go through extra steps and attack the same content they want to attack in a roundabout way, but they still have the power to do that if this were to become a law. If a Republican attorney general, for example, wants to ban abortion content, well, he can still do that under this new version, but rather than saying that the content itself is inappropriate because he's personally anti-abortion, he just have to challenge it on the basis of its design. So you find a new way to challenge the content you already don't like. So, for example, if the content that is talking about abortion and it's targeted towards minors asks for email for newsletters, or it enables push notifications or links to an external source, or encourages users to download an app, those are all grounds that an attorney general can use to challenge the websites. If you allow them to challenge a website on the basis of design, they can find anything to nitpick and get the website taken down. So, I mean, they could still use this to accomplish the same end. And if you think that they wouldn't do that, try to remember the way that Republicans in red states effectively regulated abortion clinics out of existence before.
Yep, 100%. This isn't an old. This isn't an old tactic. Okay. This isn't an old tactic. They're just using the same playbook that was very effective ultimately when it came to undoing the right to bodily autonomy, right? Abortion. I was just reading the info page on the Posada Bot Twitch channel, and it's fascinating. Aliens were mentioned. Posada Bot is awesome. It's so useful. It's so useful because like you can immediately tell like where the issues are going to be, you know, and it just kind of like combines all the knowledge of all the streamers that use Posada Bot. Exactly, it's made by lefties for lefties. Left Justified, welcome. So, like, if you get banned from a bunch of lefty communities, it'll tell you. It automatically, I think, bans or times out accounts that are, like, you know, within a short amount of time. Like, if your account is, like, 5 hours old, it'll like, time you out for a limited amount just as a cooldown period, just in case.
Before Roe v. Wade was overturned. I mean, KOSA gives them the power to do just that, albeit digitally. And they've already been chomping at the bit to do this because, as the Washington Post reports, state attorneys general, meanwhile, have launched a flurry of investigations into the ways social media platforms could be hurting kids by deploying addictive design features, culminating in a barrage of lawsuits against Facebook and Instagram parent company Meta in October. So we're playing a dangerous game here, and the bipartisan support that this legislation has is genuinely worrying. Its support is broad, and it ranges from fascists like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley to center-right senators like Joe Manchin to even center-left senators like Elizabeth Warren and Sheldon Whitehouse. And if it were to come up for a vote today, it would easily pass the Senate, and no, it couldn't be filibustered because it has 62 co-sponsors.
That's sad. Even Sheldon Whitehouse supports this bill? Yikes. They're not wrong that social media is not healthy for developing minds, but they're being deceptive about the motivations and goals. 100%. Like it's the classic like Mott and Bailey, where you know you say something that's completely inarguable, right? Like the data is pretty clear. You know, obviously social media has had a net negative impact with kids. This is not arguable. No one's arguing that. No one is going to argue with that. It's not a Mott and Bailey, but whatever. The point being is that they bring this kernel of truth and extrapolate that to then use and insert their own ideology into it.
Meaning it has 62 presumed votes. It would pass easily. Now, that is concerning, but the silver lining is that if this were to come up for a vote in the House, it's hard to say if it would get that much support, and they're unprepared to even pass it in the House because they haven't even introduced a companion piece to the Senate version, which is good to hear. So that means there's still time to stop KOSA if we act now, but that means you've got to call your senator and let him or her know that KOSA is dangerous and censoring the internet is a violation of freedom of speech, and you do not want them to support it. In fact, you demand that they don't support this. Be polite when you call, but let them know that KOSA is bad and you want them to vote against it.
Conscious Canuck, welcome. True.
I'm afraid if we don't change course that we can't win on November 5th. And that's why I'm pouring my energy into this.
Over the weekend, sitting Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib backed an effort to vote against Joe Biden in the Michigan primary. So I'm going to get to all of the details here, their strategy, where I sit on this, and I'll also get to a couple of clips from a former Democratic congressman who was also backing this effort, and his backstory is worth mentioning as well. I'll get to that. But first, let me properly set the stage here for why this is even happening. So right now in Michigan, there is a deep sense of betrayal among Arab Americans and among, as well, younger voters and people that care about human rights. And they want to see Joe Biden defeated in 2024. Now, this has, of course, been spurred based on the ongoing rising death toll numbers here from Gaza.
Read and Rap, welcome. Another Ministry of Decency Act for the Internet attempt. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's the same one. So basically, to put it as simple, like to give you the TLDR, the legislation that is being proposed here is going to give the power to state attorney generals to essentially dictate what is acceptable in terms of what minors can access on the internet. And the problem with that is that people like Ken Paxton and even one of the co-sponsors know that they can be used to censor information and erase essentially the LGBTQ community off the internet. Just as an example, these red attorney generals can and will use that power to do so. Is that a Harry Potter reference? I couldn't tell you.
Now it's over 29,000 civilians. This is polling showing Biden versus Trump. And to be clear, I'll get to more on this later. Trump would not be an improvement in this area. But it's worth mentioning that right now, Biden is the president, and he has aligned himself completely with the far right-wing Israeli government. While, occasionally leaking stories out there about how he's really upset with Netanyahu. Yet he continues to give him everything he wants. So being upset with him, on a phone call doesn't mean anything when you continue to unwaveringly support the far right-wing Israeli government. But you see here polls over the last 4 months, Biden has only won one of those polls. That was in late October, early November, where Biden's a +2. But Trump has won every other poll. Now it's at 46.9% to 42.1% in the Real Clear Politics poll average. And this has led to this new effort now. So from the New York Times, their headline, liberal groups joins efforts calling for protest vote against Biden in Michigan. And this was, at least one of the groups behind this is Our Revolution. So Our Revolution is planning to send an email, and at this point they have sent that email to 87,000 members in Michigan and to about 225,000 supporters in other states, encouraging them to vote uncommitted in the state's February 27th primary to push Biden to change course on Gaza now. So it's important to note here, they're not saying, vote for, who's even on the ballot at this point in the primary, but, Marianne Williamson or anyone else who is continuing to try and primary Joe Biden and maybe on the ballot in that state. They're saying, don't do that, vote uncommitted. As the number of uncommitted voters that we will see in the Michigan primary may give an indication as to the chances that Biden may or may not have in the general. So if there is an outpouring of support here of people coming out to vote uncommitted instead of voting for Joe Biden or anybody else on the ballot, it will showcase that there is a real chance, and I think we're already seeing that, but there's a real chance that Biden will lose Michigan in the general. And former Representative Andy Levin, again, another Democrat.
Yeah, I think this is a great way, not just to say, like, in theory, but, like, literally, if enough people show that, hey, man, this is not working out, okay? It turns out support for genocide is not incredibly popular, and people are going to stay home. You need to freaking change course. If anything, That would be a perfect way to do it and illustrate it in the real world. Yeah, Jank finally has an avenue for victory, folks. They'll vilify Tlaib no matter what she does. She might as well do something. That's true.
Pratt. He's also backed this effort, saying he warned that Mr. Biden could lose the state to former President Donald Trump in the general election without a major change in Israel policy. So the hope here is to try and put pressure on Joe Biden by showcasing an important state like Michigan, how he could lose that state by looking at the results in the upcoming Michigan primary. Now, Rashida Tlaib, of course, as I said, has backed this effort as well, saying to vote uncommitted. Here is a clip of her discussing this. This is with Listen to Michigan. So there's two groups a part of this. Our Revolution Listen to Michigan is another one. And here is Tlaib discussing this.
Know that you can early vote today until February 17th. They are open here, specifically here from 9 to 5. Check with your local clerks. There are early voting all throughout the 12th Congressional District. It is also important to create a voting block, something that is a bullhorn to say enough is enough. We don't want a country that supports wars and bombs and destruction. We want to support life. This is the way you can raise our voices. Don't make us even more invisible. Right now, we feel completely neglected and just unseen by our government. If you want us to be louder, then come here and vote uncommitted.
All right, so before I get to more clips on this from Andy Levin and more of my thoughts, I want to focus on this quote here from Rashida Tlaib, where she says, quote, "This is the way you can raise our voices. Don't make us even more invisible." Telling people who are angry with Joe Biden over his support of the far right-wing Israeli government, don't stay home. Come out and show that you are angry with Biden, and do it in this very specific way by voting uncommitted. It's very important to note this. These voters and Rashida Tlaib are not trying to hurt Joe Biden. They're trying to warn him. Hey, you will lose the election if you continue supporting this genocide. You will lose this coalition of voters, Arab Americans, younger voters, people that care about you.
Yeah, also, like, regardless, like, we are not automatically forced or committed to vote for any candidate. That is incumbent upon the candidate that wants the people's vote to make the said effort. The canceled Democratic primaries in my state of Florida changed my party to independent. DNC is earning these L's. Yes, the TLDR is that they're earning these L's. This is not the way. This is not the way to talk or to address your potential constituents, right? The people who are going to go out and vote for you.
Human rights. You will lose this coalition that helped to lead you to win in 2020 if you do not change course on Israel.
And over the whole world rose a clamor of hysterical joy.
So this is a warning. This is not hurting. Again, this is the primary. This is not hurting Joe Biden. Joe Biden is going to become the nominee regardless of what happens in Michigan. It is simply a warning that you may lose this very important state and other states because of your position on this issue. Now, this is when we get to Andy Levin. So before I show you a few clips from his reaction to this on MSNBC, this was the result in his last race. A pro-Israel group poured millions of dollars to primary Andy Levin, a Jewish candidate. So Andy Levin is Jewish. Again, it's important to note here, in case you're still confused about this. Jewish, just because somebody's Jewish doesn't mean they support Israel. And anyone that thinks that in itself is an anti-Semitic thought. Supporting a far right-wing Israeli government, it has nothing to do with being Jewish. Some of the leading groups that are against what the right-wing Israeli government is doing and for a ceasefire are Jewish groups. Jewish Voice for Peace, Independent Jewish Voices, an Israeli human rights organization, B'Tselem. So there are many individuals and many groups that represent Jewish people who are supporting a ceasefire and want to see the end of the destruction of Gaza. It's important to note that, because here you had a pro-Israel group thinking that Andy Levin wasn't sufficiently pro-Israel enough and backed a ton of, or put a ton of money into the primary to defeat him, even though he was a self-described Zionist. But it wasn't enough for this for AIPAC here. So this gets to again, I discussed this is in addition to the groups I mentioned. Hundreds of Jewish organizations or organization staffers call for White House to back Gaza ceasefire. Again, important to separate Jewish people from Israel. They are not one and the same, obviously. Here is Andy Levin discussing why he supports this effort to vote uncommitted in Michigan.
It's not our revolution or listen to Michigan, like whipping this up. People are not going to vote for Joe Biden on February 27th because they are really mad at him. Their cousins are dying. Their friends are dying. And it's not just Arab Americans. You're right. We are the densest Arab American state. We also have 250,000 Muslims in Michigan. We have 1.4 million African Americans. And you just saw the AME bishops going even farther in saying that we ought to suspend all aid to Israel, military aid to Israel. And then you've got 370-some thousand 18 to 24-year-old voters, all of whom are very upset. Now, these are somewhat overlapping groups, right?
Right.
But, amen, Joe Biden won Michigan by 150,000 votes in 2020. We need these people to vote for Joe Biden on November 5th.
All right, so I'm going to get to some reaction.
Right. So if and by the way, like Michigan is a very important state. Now we should just go for the blue guy, not demand anything from him.
From people that are not in support of this, that support Joe Biden, and my thoughts on their thoughts as well. But this point is that Andy Levin there is made is very important. This is not these groups trying to convince voters in Michigan to vote uncommitted. This is simply what the groups are doing is simply a reaction to what the feeling currently is in Michigan, with a lot of people wanting to simply tune out the election completely. This is a way to get people engaged in the political process and show their displeasure with where Joe Biden currently sits on this issue. Now, before I get to more clips, obviously I support this effort, obviously, to support or to vote uncommitted in Michigan. I think it makes complete sense to do this, especially now that you have all of this sentiment organized within this real clear effort, so that if voting uncommitted, sees a ton of support in Michigan in this primary, it'll be clear what that means to both the White House and, the Joe Biden campaign and Democrats generally. So I think it's very important to do that if you're in Michigan. It's also important to note that, as I said earlier, just to be clear about where I said on this issue, I think if Trump were in power right now, it would be the same or worse than what it currently is. And you saw, the unwavering support that Trump had for Netanyahu. He signed a declaration reversing U.S. policy on Golan Heights that led to a place there being called Trump Heights. Like, it's very clear where Donald Trump sits on this topic, regardless of how he's trying to be uncommitted right now because he sees the polling and where all that sits. But it's very clear where he would be if he were in.
So our choices are the old guy in blue or the old guy in red. Yeah.
Power. And then he also vowed shortly after October 7th, he vowed to expand his travel ban to Gaza, saying that he would not take in any Palestinian refugees. So again, just another example of where he sits. But the reason why I support this effort is twofold. First, I think it lets potentially some air out of the tires. It allows voters to really voice their frustration now instead of having to wait till the general. And it may potentially ease some tension before the general and keep people engaged in the political process. Also, it's clearly a message to Joe Biden and the campaign. If he underperforms in Michigan, it shows him and the party that there is a very good chance that he will lose Michigan and potentially other important swing states if he continues down this path, and that he must change course. Clearly, Biden doesn't care enough about the lives of Palestinians, but maybe he cares enough about his own political career. We're seeing that warning sign to be enough for him to change strategy. At least that's the hope. Now, let me get to, again, some of the reactions from a couple of Democrats here. This was a clip show shown to Andy.
Yeah, and if he's not interested in earning people's votes, then, don't care voting for Cenk. Biden may be exacerbating the situation, but Trump caused and massively accelerated the situation. Maybe. I just don't. I don't know. I mean, Netanyahu holds the responsibility here, and Netanyahu is the one that made these decisions. The problem is that Netanyahu has essentially, effectively, unwavering support from the current administration, and that's ultimately what's being argued, right? Like, this needs to stop.
Andy Levin, and I'll get to his thoughts as well. But first, let me show you what these Democrats not in support of this are saying.
And so Rashida Tlaib is not there to represent the squad. She's not there to represent Palestine. While there's merit in all those things, you're there to represent your hometown constituency in the city of Detroit. And I will tell all my friends and family in Detroit that your congresswoman has failed you and frankly embarrassed you, and there could potentially be ramifications.
If you want to see Donald Trump beat Joe Biden, then you have voices of Charlemagne and Rashida Tlaib questioning Joe Biden's leadership, suggesting he's not fit for.
Yeah, dude. Wait, like, so you're just expecting like people to just fall in line? You're just expecting people to just fall in line because they're Democrats. You're just not allowed. You're just not allowed to go against like the. You're just not allowed to go against the dear leader. That seems kind of weird. And to question Joe Biden's leadership. Bro. True, but Trump opened the door and Netanyahu knew that the door would not be closed once it's open. Well, yeah, I suppose so. Although I feel like... I'm being honest, I feel like it wouldn't have mattered, But whatever, that's just playing what if games at that point.
The re-election. That's how you do it. Democrats beating themselves.
This is so unbelievably stupid. This idea that if political leaders just ignore the issues with Joe Biden, that's going to be the way to win an election. That's what happened in 2016. And Trump won. You have to be willing to engage. Now, look, maybe they aren't doing it publicly, like these people here. Maybe they're doing it privately. That's another way to try and pressure the president. You don't necessarily, as somebody especially if you're in Congress, you don't necessarily have to be public about your displeasure, but you have to, in some way, understand the risk here and where Joe Biden sits and just how unlikely it is that he will win the general election if what's happening in Gaza continues and if Biden continues supporting Israel as they are doing it. So there has to be both pressure from activist groups, the rare political leader like Rashida Tlaib who's willing to do it publicly, but also internally around Joe Biden. Democrats have to be warning the president that he has to change course on this. Now,
I think he's already been told this, right? Like, this isn't like news, by the way. This idea is like, if political talking heads and pundits, not just online, but even in mainstream, like, mainstream news are talking about this, I'm hard pressed to think that the Biden campaign isn't aware of this, okay? MSNBC, DNC. corporate politicians do not respect their constituents at all. True. I don't think he cares. Yeah, well, that may be the case. Because I find it hard to believe that the Biden campaign doesn't know. I find it hard to believe that the Biden campaign doesn't know how much this is hurting them, how much this is affecting Biden's numbers. You had 3.5 years of mumble, mutter, then 4 months of fear. Don't let the bad people get elected. One of our highest patriotic duties is to look critically at our government and demand that it functions as it should, make America great again, but like actually. Yeah, see, the thing is, like, it's absurd to me that you can't, like, anybody who says that you can't criticize a politician is, like, to immediately not be regarded. Like, their opinion can be immediately disregarded. Because if the implication is, like, oh, you just can't question Biden's leadership. You're not you're not a good Democrat, okay? Because you went against the president's plans or whatever. Like, I think that that is absurd. Politicians should be treated like the public servants that they are. Exactly. And that means you get criticized, okay? That means you get criticized. That's just the way it goes.
Now, I'm going to get to Andy Levin's reaction to those Democrats.
Frankly, I don't care what a bunch of talking-headed pundits say on MSNBC. We're here on the ground in Michigan, and they are dead wrong. Representative Tlaib is representing her constituents. 1,000 black pastors in this country have written to the president saying, we are super upset about this. So, the idea that you either bring home the bacon or you work on human rights around the world is nonsense. And Representative Tlaib is trying to do both. We must do both. Joe Biden has done a good job on a lot of it, but we need him to change course on this. We can't stand 28,000 people being killed, women and children being killed at the fastest rate of any conflict since World War II, the most journalists being killed in any conflict on record. And all these facts, they go on and on and on. 2,000-pound bombs provided by the U.S. being dropped on places, according to the New York Times, where the IDF told civilians to run to. And then our military officials say we wouldn't use those bombs at all on such a dense population. We haven't done it in decades.
Andy Levin there makes a great point about the talking heads on television. I mean, these people, to be clear, are paid to defend Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. So obviously they're not going to come out and back what Rashida Tlaib and Andy Levin are advocating for here. But that's why it's even more important. I mean, again, listening to the pundits, listening to the Democratic consultants is exactly, again, what led, at least partially, what helped to lead Hillary lose in 2016 and ignore the desires of actual voters. But last thing to end on here, there was story after story coming out. It's hard to cover it all and really update you update you with a video on every single topic coming up or every single news story coming up. But this is one that I had to get in somewhere because this just recently came out today from the UN. UN experts appalled by reported human rights violations against Palestinian women and girls. So apparently, what the IDF is doing to Palestinian women and girls in both prisons and the people that they are rounding up in Gaza and in the West Bank is I can't even discuss it on YouTube without this video being taken down. So this is, again, one of the many stories that will likely be ignored because this is the reality of what is happening. Thankfully, there are, we are seeing generally now more of a recognition of what is going on from outlets like the New York Times, but the voices aren't as strong as they need to be for there to be any real changes here. It's important to understand just how far right-wing Joe Biden is right now. He is literally supporting a genocide. So for anyone to be angry at voters for their displeasure, you're being ridiculous. Your anger should be with the Democratic Party, or more specifically with Joe Biden in the White House, and where they currently...
True. That's what I've been saying. I just had a mini stroke. I accidentally clicked on Hawes' stream without realizing his chat is insane. Like, Hawes, like, Infrared, formerly known as Infrared. Oh, Hassan. Other Haz, like H-A-S. Because, like, Haz, H-A-Z, yeah. I might have even gotten the wrong name. Yeah, like, it's funny because H-A-Z, like, Haz, is infrared. Yeah. At least I think so. I don't know. Yeah. And if you haven't seen Infrared, it's probably better, you know. Hassan's chat moves way too fast for me to make heads or tails as to what the heck is going on in there. I'm gonna be quite honest with you. Like Hassan Abi's chat is way too fast. I can't even make heads or tails out of it.
Sit on this.
Post into the void. Yeah, I can't. All right, let's switch gears really quickly, folks. Michigan becomes the first state in 6 decades to scrap an infamous anti-union law. Big Gretch. For the first time in almost 60 years, the state has formally overturned the so-called right-to-work law, clearing the way for workers to organize new union locals, collectively bargain, and make their voices heard at election time. Nice! This week, Michigan finalized the process of eliminating a decade-old right-to-work law, which began with the shift in control of the state legislature from anti-union Republicans to pro-union Democrats following the 2022 election. This moment has been decades in the making, declared Michigan AFL-CIO President Ron Bieber. By standing up and taking their power back at the ballot box and in the workplace, workers have made it clear Michigan is and always will be the beating heart of the modern American labor movement. In addition to formally scrapping the anti-labor law on Tuesday, Michigan also restored prevailing wage protections for construction workers, expanded collective bargaining rights for public school employees, and restored organizing rights for graduate student research assistants at the state's public colleges and universities. But even amid all these wins for labor, it was the overturning of the right-to-work law that caught the attention of news nationwide. Starting in the formerly segregated states of the South, where such laws were rapidly enacted around the end of World War II, to thwart the Congress of Industrial Organizations, Operation Dixie, campaign to organize multiracial unions across the region, this most destructive form of anti-labor legislation was later adopted in Western states, where mining unions had historically been strong, and finally spread into 2010s to the industrialized heartlands of the Great Lakes region. Now the tide has began to turn, beginning in the state with a rich labor history, and that's got the attention of union activists and working class people nationwide. Quote, as of today, Michigan is no longer a right-to-work state, announced the Teamsters Union in social media postings and that featured a party hat and confetti. The Service Employees International Union celebrated the news as a, quote, big win. Tweeting, after a decade of organizing and voting for change, Michigan workers finally won the appeal of the state's so-called right-to-work law. This is the power we have when we unite at work, in the streets, and at the ballot box. True. At a time when the labor movement is showing a renewed vigor and notching a string of high-profile victories, including last year's successful strike by the UAW against the Big Three, the historic UPS contract victory by the Teamsters, the SAG-AFTRA strike win in a struggle over abuses of AI technology, in particular the future of work in general, and the explosion of grassroots union organizing at workplaces across the country, the overturning of Michigan's right-to-work law, and the implementation of a sweeping pro-union agenda provides tangible evidence of how much has changed in recent years for workers and their unions. This is where stuff happens, folks. Okay, this is very big, because if other states begin to do this, this is pretty big. If there was a low point for the American labor movement in recent decades, there's a good case to be made that it came in 2012 when Michigan adopted the right-to-work law that had been promoted by wealthy and corporate-friendly Republican Governor Rick Snyder and approved by Republican-controlled state legislature. This anti-labor legislation historically associated with southern states was now on the books in states where Depression-era sit-down strikers helped give birth to the powerful UAW, and where unions had from the 1930s onward done a better job of organizing than most anywhere else in the country. The implementation of Michigan's right-to-work law came shortly after Indiana, also a historically strong union state, enacted a similar measure, and shortly before another Great Lakes manufacturing state, Wisconsin, did the same. The movement to undermine the ability of workers to organize and collectively bargain was on the march in this period, after Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, with support from right-wing donors such as the Koch brothers, attacked public sector unions in a high-profile 2011 struggle. Politicians like Mitt Romney, the party's 2012 presidential nominee, were promising to fight for right-to-work laws nationwide, and the U.S. Senate Kentucky Republican Rand Paul, of course, would eventually attract 30 co-sponsors for his National Right to Work Act. Cool. Very nice. By the mid-2010s, 27 states had the right to work laws on the books, more than half the country. But then as a new generation of workers embraced the fight for 15, organizing to raise wages and campaigns to sign up workers at Starbucks and Amazon began to take off, the corporate-sponsored crusade to enact the right to work measures were stalled. New Hampshire's legislation blocked the proposed right to work law in 2017 and again in 2021, despite the fact that the measure was promoted by Republican Governor Chris Sununu. And in 2018, Missouri voters rejected a right to work referendum by a 67-33 margin. Nice! Preventing anti-union legislation from being enacted and implemented is one thing. However, actually overturning an existing law is something else altogether. But that's what happened in Michigan after 2022. Voting saw the re-election of Governor Gretchen Whitmer and a Labor ally, and thanks to the overturning of gerrymandered legislation district maps that had favored the GOP, the election of Democratic majorities in the state, House, and Senate. For the first time in 4 decades, the Democrats controlled all major levels of power in Michigan, and they used them to implement a sweeping pro-labor agenda. God dang, imagine, if you will, a national push by the Democratic Party like this. That was a significant shift for Michigan, to be sure, but it was also an indication of what could be done in other states across the Great Lakes region and nationwide. Michigan Democrats took full control of the state government for the first time in 40 years. They used that power to repeal the state's right to work law, explained a delighted U.S. former Secretary of Labor Robert Reich. Oh yeah, Robert Reich. This is why we have to show up for our state and local elections. True. Imagine. Imagine a world, if you will, where this is the entire broad democratic strategy in the at the national level. Imagine. Sharpie Diesel. I don't know if I said welcome, but welcome. Yeah, imagining vividly. Man. Big props, okay? Massive props to Big Gretch, okay? A rare ADT sighting. Welcome, Hambless. Big props to Big Gretch, okay? And with hopes that other Democratic governors take note, especially those that have the state legislatures behind them too. Good things. Okay? It turns out you can do good things with power. If you want them. Welcome, Hambless. I'm hanging in there. Just to get a quick laugh, okay? Let's do this meme article. Okay, this is just funny. Supreme Court leaves sanctions. Pay off the college debt yet? No, how do I say this? Without giving too much information. I'm not the one with said debt. But Biden relieving college debt would greatly benefit our financial situation. Yeah. Just saying. The Supreme Court leaves sanctions in place against Sidney Powell and others over the 2020 election suit in Michigan. I'm so glad he didn't restart the debt after Trump paused it. Oh, wait. We're still, by the way, we're still waiting to see how that's going to play out. And to what extent that's going to happen. Educating our kids is the problem, according to Republicans. Did you see that? Yeah. It's not the first time they've it's not the first time they've made that argument. Pretty sure the other day, I don't know if this is what you're referencing. They've said it before. They've made these arguments before. It's not novel. But the other day we were watching a Majority Report segment with they were playing a segment of Brett Cooper from the Daily Wire, and she said something to that effect where like the argument was that basically education is not anything useful except for preparing you to be a cog in the capitalist wheel, essentially. That is the only purpose of education. Yes, okay, so we are talking about the same thing. Ah, that's funny. The Supreme Court on Tuesday declined to take up a bid by a group of Trump-allied lawyers who face monetary and professional sanctions in Michigan as a result of their baseless claims raised in a lawsuit that the 2020 what is this? Give me 1 second, folks. Huh. been a fun week with Acorn Cop and Daily Show Santos interview. Yeah, the Acorn Cop was, that was a story. Thankfully, nobody got killed. Surprisingly, nobody got killed. The one-line order from the High Court, rejecting the appeals brought by lawyers Sidney Powell, yeah, it is a classic Florida story, huh? Not to forget Tucker and his daddy Putin. Right, the grocery store Tucker, who apparently can't understand basic maths. Basic economics. One-line order from the High Court rejecting the appeals brought by lawyers Sidney Powell, Lynn Wood, and 5 others leaves in place a decision from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit that partially upheld penalties imposed in the wake of the last presidential contest. Powell and Wood were among a group of lawyers allied with former President Trump who pushed unfounded claims about the 2020 election in courts in key battleground states. Powell famously pledged to, quote, release the Kraken, which never happened. After the 2020 election, likening the mythical sea monster to the legal challenges he was pursuing as part of an effort to overturn Biden's win and keep Trump in power for a second term. Powell, Wood, and other 5 lawyers were sanctioned in Michigan as a result of a lawsuit that attempted to reverse the state's election results. The district court ordered them to pay more than $175,000 to cover the legal fees that the city of Detroit and state incurred to defend the lawsuit. In addition to the monetary penalties, Powell, Wood, and the others were referred to the Bar Association in each state for disciplinary hearings or proceedings. The district court said the sanctions were intended to defer future suits designed primarily to spread the narrative that our election process was rigged. The Sixth Circuit upheld the sanctions but lessened the amount the lawyers had to pay to over $150,000. Beyond the sanctions in Michigan, Powell was charged with a sprawling racketeering case brought by the Fulton County District Attorney in August. He has reached a plea deal with prosecutors in October and agreed to plead guilty to 6 misdemeanor counts. So, mwomp, mwomp, mwomp. Even the incredibly conservative Supreme Court is not jumping to these clowns' aid. Personally, I find that hilarious. The Trump fraud trial penalty will exceed $450 million. Dude. Continues to score. This is probably why Trump is now selling these absurd shoes, which have apparently sold out, by the way. Yeah, that's cool. Somehow, like, I don't know if this is organic or not, but somehow, he's managed to con his supporters into giving him hundreds of dollars for these, like, really ugly shoes. Trump just got ranked the worst president in U.S. history. Funny and also duh. The ruling in Donald Trump's civil fraud case could cost him all his available cash. The judge said the former president's complete lack of contrition bordered on pathological. A New York judge on Friday handed Trump a crushing defeat in his civil fraud case, finding the former president liable for conspiring to manipulate his net worth and ordering him to pay a penalty of nearly $355 million plus interest that could wipe out his entire stockpile of cash. The decision by Justice Engoron caps a chaotic years-long case in which the New York Attorney General put Mr. Trump's fantastical claims of wealth on trial With no jury, the power was in Justice Engron's hands alone, then he came down hard. The judge delivered a sweeping array of punishments that threatened the former president's business empire as he simultaneously contends with 4 criminal prosecutions and seeks to regain the White House. Justice Engron barred Trump for 3 years from serving in top roles of any New York company, including portions of his own Trump organization. He also imposed a 2-year ban on the former president's adult sons in order that they pay more than $4 million each. One of them, Eric Trump, is the company's de facto chief executive, and the ruling throws into doubt whether any of the members of the family can run the business in the near term. Yeah. You're asking somehow about Trump supporters? Yeah, I guess you're right. A judge ordered also that they pay substantial interest, pushing the penalty for the former president to $450 million, according to the New York, and according to the Attorney General Letitia James. This is in his unconventional style. Justice Engron criticized Trump and the other defendants for refusing to admit any wrongdoing for years. Quote, their complete lack of contrition and remorse borders on pathological. He noted that Mr. Trump had not committed violent crimes and also conceded that Donald Trump is not Bernie Madoff. Still, he wrote, the defendants are incapable of admitting the error of their ways. Mr. Trump will appeal the financial penalty, but will have to either to come up with the money or secure a bond within 30 days. The ruling will not render him bankrupt because most of his wealth is in real estate, which altogether is worth far more than the penalty. Mr. Trump will also ask an appeals court to halt the restrictions on him and his sons from running the company while it considers the case. In the news conference in Palm Beach, Mar-a-Lago on Friday evening, he attacked Ms. James and Justice Engron, calling them both corrupt. Alina Habba, one of Mr. Trump's lawyers, described the ruling in her own statement as a manifest injustice, plain and simple. She added that given the grave stakes, we trust the appellate division will overturn this egregious verdict. Okay. Sure. But there might be little Mr. Trump can do to thwart one of the judge's most consequential punishments, extending for 3 years the appointment of an independent monitor who is the court's eyes and ears at the Trump Organization. Justice Engron also strengthened the monitor's authority to watch for fraud and second-guess transactions that look suspicious. Mr. Trump's lawyers have railed against the monitor, Barbara Jones, saying that her work had already cost the business more than $2.5 million. The decision to extend her oversight of the privately held company could enrage the Trumps who see her presence as irritant and an insult. Well, that sounds like a you problem. Never underestimate the ignorance, gullibility, or malice of a Trump supporter. True. Ms. James, who sought an even harsher penalty, asking for Mr. Trump to be permanently barred from New York business world in the 2022 lawsuit that precipitated the trial, she accused Mr. Trump of inflating his net worth to obtain favorable treatment from banks and other lenders, attacking the foundation of his public persona as a billionaire businessman. Even though the lenders made money from Trump, they were the purported victims in the case, with Ms. James arguing that without his fraud, they could have made even more. The financial penalty reflects those lost profits, were nearly half of the $355 million, $168 million representing the interest that Mr. Trump saved, and the remaining sum representing his profit on the sale of 2 properties, money that the judges have now clawed back from Mr. Trump and corporate entities he owns. Before the trial began, Justice Engron ruled that the former president had used his annual financial statements to defraud lenders, siding with the Attorney General on her case's central claim. The judge's Friday ruling ratified almost all other accusations Ms. James had leveled against Mr. Trump, finding that the former president had conspired with his top executives to violate several state laws. The judge's decision for now grants Ms. James a Democratic career-defining victory. She campaigned for office promising to bring Mr. Trump to justice and sat calmly in the courtroom as the former president attacked her, calling her a corrupt politician motivated by self-interest. This is a long-running fraud. This long-running fraud was intentional, egregious, and illegal, said Ms. James during a Friday evening news conference, adding that there cannot be different rules for different people in this country, and former presidents are no exception. Her win is Mr. Trump's second major courtroom loss in 2 months following a January jury verdict in a defamation case brought by Jean Carroll, a writer who he was found liable of sexually abusing. The jury penalized him with $83.3 million. Friday's ruling comes as Manhattan prosecutors are set to try Mr. Trump on criminal charges late next month. He's also contending with 57 more felony counts across 3 other criminal cases, but none of his legal troubles seem to anguish Mr. Trump quite like the fraud case. During the trial, he protested his premise, believing it has been a persecution of somebody that's done a good job in New York. Yeah. Okay. Legal Eagle has an excellent video on this. Legal Eagle is pretty good when it comes to these kind of things. I don't doubt it. Mr. Trump's lawyers argued that the fraud did not have a victim in the traditional sense, daring an attorney general to find someone who was harmed. And in a statement on Friday, a Trump Organization spokeswoman noted that the company had never missed any loan payments or been in default on any loan, and that the lenders performed extensive due diligence prior to entering into these transactions. At trial, Mr. Trump's lawyers called as witnesses the president's former bankers who testified that they had been delighted to have Mr. Trump as a client. Eric Trump and his brother Donald Trump Jr. also testified, but their efforts to distance themselves from their father's financial statements fell flat with the judge. Justice Engoron's decision to bar them from running any New York business for 2 years and Mr. Trump for 3 will likely strike a nerve with the Trump family. Before the trial, the fallout from the case seemed to threaten the Trump Organization's very existence. When Justice Engoron first ruled that Trump had committed fraud, he ordered the dissolution of much of the former president's New York empire. But legal experts had questioned the judge's ability to do that, and in his ruling on Friday, Justice Engoron pulled back. Instead, the judge said any restructuring and potential dissolution would be up to Ms. Jones, the independent monitor. The judge also granted Ms. Jones new authority as part of an enhanced monitorship and asked her to recommend an independent compliance director who will oversee the company's financial reporting from within its ranks. The monitorship and other penalties include a 3-year ban on Mr. Trump and his company seeking loans from banks registered in New York, could hamstring the company as it seeks to compete in the state's crowded real estate market. However, nothing will quite hurt as much as the financial penalty. If upheld on appeal, it could erase the cushion of liquidity, cash, stocks, and bonds that Mr. Trump built in his post-presidential life. Mr. Trump claimed under oath last year that he was sitting on more than $400 million in cash between Justice Engoron's $355 million punishment, the interest Mr. Trump owes, and the $83 million payout to Ms. Carroll, that might all be gone. If so, Mr. Trump might have to sell one of his properties or other assets to cover the payouts. The symbolism of the punishment cannot be overlooked either. Mr. Trump is synonymous with the company he ran for decades, and by severing him from the operations, the judge has written an embarrassing epilogue to the former president's story of his career as a New York mogul. Anyways, TLDR, this is hilarious, and almost $500 million. Did you see Trump defamed Jean Carroll again? It took him 30 days this time. I mean, I guess, hey, if he wants to lose another, tens of millions, I guess, by all means, I'm sure that if he gets taken to court and loses again, I'm pretty sure that we will see the next Trump grift, right? Maybe not shoes. Maybe, I don't know what he'll come up with. Maybe designer clothes. Trump design line, okay? Who knows? Yeah, Trump coin, okay? Trump crypto, Trump coin. Whatever you can think of, it will be dumber. True. All right, folks. We got one more story. The Alabama Supreme Court rules frozen embryos are children because reasons. I saw a pastor got busted for defrauding his congregation selling them worthless cryptocurrency, like Jesus coins. He made out with millions and hiding in Zambia. Jesus. Like, did he make like a Jesus coin? Oh, index. I mean, sneakers, that was on no one's bingo card. That's true. I did not expect Trump to come out with, like, Trump sneakers. Like index. Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me. Wow. Because Alabama judges never pass basic biology. True. He already did NFTs. Yeah, that's true. That's true, but he didn't do crypto yet, so... Yeah. If they're gonna use the Bible as law, let's mandate the washing of feet. True. I don't know. He hasn't done crypto. He hasn't done like a designer fashion line, or has he? I don't know. Hey, he hasn't done coffee. Trump coffee. Cookies. Trump cookies. There you go. Yeah, you can just repackage Pokemons. Oh man, this is that's not good. He can team up with Omaha Steaks. No, wait, he already did that. Yep, Trump Steaks. Alabama Supreme Court, Trump sperm donation. No. Alabama Supreme Court has ruled that frozen embryos are children under state law and subject to legislation dealing with wrongful death of a minor, stating that it applies to all unborn children regardless of their location. So, like, explain this one to me, okay? Someone, seriously, rationalize this one for me, okay? We're now, like, by the way, this used to be God, like a satirization, a hyperbolic scenario, that I would use against conservative anti-choice logic. But no, apparently they're completely serious about this. They actually believe that frozen embryos are literal children. Frozen children, yes. Cool. Very, very normal, very hinged. The court issued this majority decision in a lawsuit brought forth by a group of in vitro fertilization patients whose frozen embryos were destroyed in December of 2020 when a patient removed the embryos from a cryogenic storage unit and dropped them on the ground. The plaintiffs subsequently filed 2 lawsuits against the facility, the Center for Reproductive Medicine, alleging that the clinic had violated Alabama's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act, which applies to unborn children. The plaintiffs also alternatively alleged that a negligence on the part of the clinic and sought compensatory damage, though the claims of negligence were specified only to be pleaded if the Alabama court or the U.S. Supreme Court decided that frozen embryos were not children. The defendant's motion to dismiss the lawsuits were granted by a trial court that found a frozen embryo did not fall within the definition of a person or child, which no duh. The court also ruled that the plaintiffs could not proceed with their calls for compensatory damage for the loss of a human life and emotional damage, citing long-standing legal standards in Alabama. In its decision, the Alabama Supreme Court did not address the question whether extrauterine children should be treated as human beings, but it did find that the state law did not specify what state an unborn child is to be in. Oh my god. The relevant statutory text is clear. The Wrongful Death of a Minor Act applies on its face to all unborn children without limitation. Cool. The court found that there's no unwritten exception, as the defendants have argued, to the law that applies to the unborn children who are not physically located in utero, that is inside a biological uterus, at the time that they are killed. The defendants have also argued that considering frozen embryos as children would result in numerous consequences, including making intravenous fertilization more expensive and preserving embryos more onerous. While we appreciate the defendants' concerns, these type of policy-focused arguments belong before the legislature, not this court. However, people freeze their eggs for a reason. It's a big mistake. I'd be pissed, but the recourse should not be civil, not criminal. Right. And again, obviously, this was completely unacceptable. On the hospital. On the hospital side, but like that's not a child. That is not a child. Okay. Makes absolutely no sense. Don't even know if they'd be viable. Sperm and eggs might as well qualify. Exactly. Like this is taking this to absurd levels. As a former Fundy Christian apologist, they use this to trot out the toddler technique to argue against abortion. If you can take for granted that the embryo is a person, you have won the argument in their minds. But in reality, it is a cluster of cells. Yes. The ruling was issued by Alabama Supreme Court Justice Jay Mitchell, with 7 of the 8 justices concurring. Yeah, and incapable of ever becoming a human without our intervention. That's right. Can we at least get a toddler witness to identify what a child is and isn't? If cells are a person, then my womb is a mass murderer. Alabama Supreme Court Justice Greg Cook issued a dissenting opinion. Cook argued that, in his opinion, it was not within the role of the court to expand the reach of a statute and breathe life into it by updating or amending it. He argued that the law was written in 1872 would not have taken into account the status of frozen embryos, and to argue that the law does would require an explicit amendment from the state legislature. Cool. Cool stuff happening in Alabama. Also, I love how like this poll seems to be at the front of this article here. If you're not able to see it here, this is a Michigan poll with Trump edging out Biden by 3 points within the margin of error. Folks, it's time. I gotta get out of here. That doesn't faze them since they also believe God made the world in 6 days, 7,000 years ago. True. How dare Talib not bend the knee and bow the head. True. Someone stole my username, man. Thank you. I appreciate you hanging out. Before I go, folks, don't forget, thank you, Sharpie Diesel. A couple of things. Again, don't forget to follow. It really does help us out. If you're on the YouTube, don't forget to like the stream. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Spread the word. We're here Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget, if you want to join the Discord, this upcoming Saturday is the movie night. And you can join the Discord, vote for your category. So far, I think the sci-fi category has it. In which case, I am considering streaming Starship Troopers. So if you want to check that out, you can join the Discord. Consider checking out the merch. You can support the channel that way as well, while wearing some cool swag. I appreciate the support. Thank you for your subscriptions, biddies, follows, everything. You guys are what makes this channel grow. Thank you, Michael Hassler, and thank you, Heat, for modding the chat. Yeah, service guarantees citizenship. Remember Facebook, folks? Yes, I do, actually. I remember when that was a thing. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. Avion, I hope to see you guys in the next one tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. See ya. All right, folks, hang tight. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.